Greetings, creeps. Welcome to Convo Fango. We are joined by Infinity Pool's writer, director, Brandon Cronenberg. Yay. Thanks
Hello.
for coming to chat about this super weird, super horny, super wonderful movie of yours.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the debate that I have personally been getting into this week is about kind of like who's the original and who is the copy. And I'm wondering if that was something that you were kind of hoping would fuck with us a little bit, or if for you it was always very clear cut and you didn't think people were going to be having this debate.
I have my own answer, but I refuse to give it because
I
I would love
figured.
people to
Okay.
have that
I knew
debate.
better than to ask you your own answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's yeah, part of the interest and hopefully to some degree the fun of that aspect of the film is leaving it up for discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those ones where I watched it one night and I'm thinking about it and I woke up still thinking about it, and that, like, I love that shit because it still stuck with me. And then I had like text messages from coworkers about like, okay, did we all see it? Yes. And then just like these paragraphs of why we all thought what we thought. And to me, I mean, there's no wrong answer. My take on it is kind of like, it's kind of whatever fucks with you the most. Like what option to you is the scariest, most like perverted version of this world, and that's kind of what your answer is.
Right.
But the other answer
Yeah.
is
We
correct
all know
too.
we all between us, your version is right also. Like
Okay.
no, that's great. I mean, that's really, really exciting to hear because I couldn't ask for anything more. I think if people have any interest in talking about your film, even remotely, let alone discussing it, like, you're very lucky.
Yeah, this is kind of one of those ones I wish I would have seen in a theater and gotten to go and, like, you know, have a burger afterwards, and then you're kind of discussing it with your friends. It's that kind of a film, which is like my favorite kind of thing to watch with friends.
I've always seen it as a burger movie
It
myself.
is a burger. All right, I'm gonna come to Canada. We'll grab a burger, and then you can tell me what your answer is. And I promise I won't tell anybody.
All right, great.
You have my word, blood oath. So I watched the unrated version of this. I know the R-rated version is going to theaters, and it looks like there's a good chunk of minutes missing from the runtime, if I'm correct. And I'm wondering, do you know what like debauchery theater goers are going to be missing out on?
No, sure. I mean, I cut both versions of it, so
Okay.
it
Okay.
wasn't cut without me.
It wasn't
They're
like a
both.
surprise.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise. It was a long process and a sort of back and forth with the MPA, and so um, I mean, there are a few, without giving anything away, sort of giving. I mean, there's a hand job, obviously. I mean,
Okay.
that even though that was fake, I'll say it was just fantastic work by Dan Martin, my effects artist. But um, otherwise, it's honestly just some trims here and there. It is still the same movie. I really would love people to see it in theaters because I think more than the specific details of those scenes, we did a lot of work on the visuals. This is great. Tim Hacker score, our sound team did a good job. I'd love people to see it that way. Ultimately, it is still the same film. There are actually some shots in the R version that aren't in the unrated that are kind of interesting because we didn't want to mess with the score, so we're sort of flipping some shots in and out in the hallucinations and so on. But it's ultimately a pretty similar film.
Yeah, it didn't. You take out the hand job, and it's a completely different movie. And now I'm lost in the plot. Like,
yeah, you know what? I mean, the hand job is still there, to be clear. It's just there are two shots missing, but
in a
more.
different way.
Yeah, there's more semen dripping on rocks. So if that's what people are into, go for the R.
Gotcha. I'm actually going to go see it in a theater, not just because of the semen dripping on the rocks. I was already planning to go see it in the theater. That's going to be the
Okay, cool.
tagline on the poster, is that the semen dripping on the rocks. I'm like, that's what's going to get my butt in the seats. Yeah. No, I love that. And I also love just, I mean, your shit is weird in the best possible way, and I love it. And it's all very like hallucinogenic, and this like, you have this very like nightmarish factor to things, and there's like orgies happening, but it's like these like weird neon lights and like these cuts and like the score, so it just like all blends together in this really uncomfortable but beautiful way. And I'm excited to see that like on a big screen with like a proper sound system and just kind of like be blown away by that.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't normally. It's funny. I don't normally fetishize theatrical the way some directors do. Normally, I like I like telling people, just see it wherever, don't worry
Yeah.
about it. But I've been doing tech checks, and we saw it at Sundance in a theater, and I think it is actually pretty exciting for me to see it that way. Like I think a lot of the detail really comes through, and also hopefully the humor. I mean, at least at the Sundance screening where I was at, people seemed to get the humor as well as everything else in it, and that felt better in the context of a group, I guess.
Yeah, there's something to watching it with an audience too. I mean, like for you, that had to be exciting. And then especially when there's humor involved for something that's this dark, and it's kind of like a dark humor, and you don't really, you're like, I know that it lands for me. I know my own dark sense of humor. But then like when you can hear that like, that joke is landing with the audience, that has to like feel nice. Like, oh shit, okay, people get it.
Yeah, as soon as people started laughing, I thought, okay, I mean, at least this crowd,
Right.
we have a good crowd. It felt really good. There is one Jackson Pollock pun that nobody laughs at, and I've like one day I want somebody to laugh at that. I thought it was a decent pun, totally gets no laughs whatsoever, and so that was admittedly a complete failure on my part. But the other jokes seem to be coming through pretty well. So.
I'm sorry I was not in person at the Sundance screening, because I'm not bullshitting you just because you said that. I cackled at that line. But
Really?
yeah, I did.
You're literally the only one. It was like I think there were a couple of like older colonoscopy fans who were just kind of like polite clap, like, okay,
I never thought of myself as an older colonoscopy fan, but I guess that's my brand, guys. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. In spirit, I guess.
Listen, I'm just gonna say I like puns, and I heard that, and I was like, like, and I was like, but it's just me, so I wasn't like looking around like no one else got that. My dog looked at me, but I'm like, you don't get any of the jokes, so.
Dogs have no sense of humor.
No sense of humor whatsoever. I'm like, this is wasted on you. There's something like, this is obviously like kind of like a science fiction, but in Possessor, we're playing with some of the same concepts, but we get very into like the science and like the how of it.
Mm-hmm.
In this, I thought it was interesting because we're just presented with this concept, and we understand how it works. We don't go deep into like the science of like breaking this is how we're able to make it work. We just know that this exists. And was that a conscious decision for you to just be like, this is, because that's not really what the meat of the story is. So I'm just wondering if you intentionally moved away from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost in spirit, even though it's sci-fi, a little bit closer to magic realism, maybe in a way, because in Possessor, although it's sort of an alternate sci-fi universe, it could almost play like the near future, whereas this is very much just now, except with this one weird thing that then works more metaphorically and sort of sets these things in motion. And I really like fiction that works that way, where a short story that's about a real situation, but one impossible thing happens, and that's creates a structure where you can talk about other stuff, and even if it has a dream logic to it, it becomes a kind of interesting mirror. And so, yeah, I was more interested in that. It's not a very good predictive science fiction film about the future of cloning technology. It's like, how does it work? Why is it just in this one country? It's not really meant to make sense like that. It's meant to have a bit more of a dream logic to it.
Yeah, but I appreciated that element of it because it's like a really horrible fairy tale kind of aspect to it. And then it's like people behaving badly because, what are the consequences? And then holding up this really awful distorted mirror of like, okay, who do you think you would become in this kind of scenario? Like,
I like fairy tale is a good take on it. Seeing it as a fairy tale is maybe fun.
Yeah, maybe we'll go with that. So are there elements of this that you based on reality, like a terrible vacation, and then you just kind of like horribly did like this perversion of that?
There some of it, yes. I mean, I've only once been to a kind of traditional all-inclusive resort, maybe 20 years ago, but I guess it stuck with me because I kept on coming back to it and borrowing from it when I was building the resort.
Yeah.
The fact that it was a compound entirely enclosed in razor wire fence, that was actually the case with this resort, the sort of fake town where you could shop, but you couldn't really leave the resort. the Chinese restaurant, the disco, the scene with the guy on the ATV that actually happened. And so, yeah, I suppose memories of that vacation were informing at least the resort section. Not in other ways, obviously, it wasn't quite the same experience, but
I mean, that all sounds weird as fuck in itself, because as soon as I saw the razor wire, I'm like, why the fuck would you stay at a resort that has to be built like a compound? But
the
you
real
did.
one,
You win.
the
Like,
real
what?
one was worse because it was only barbed wire in the film. It was like full razor wire, like hidden badly by dried palm leaves. It was very weird, and you couldn't see any of it. It was really kind of disturbing because you got bussed in the middle of the night. You couldn't see any of the surrounding country. You stayed in this completely tacky Disneyland version of reality for a week. And then they bust you out at the end, and you see that, there's a lot of fairly intense poverty surrounding the area. You completely did not really visit the country at all.
Right.
And that was obviously pretty disturbing and horrible on a lot of levels, but also weird because what country did you visit? Like what is that space? What is the space? Is it an embassy for a kind of global tourist nation? Is it an alternate dimension growing up in the middle of the host state? Yeah, it's surreal and menacing.
Okay, I don't know how this is your first movie about that, if you stayed there that many years ago, because that's bizarre and sounds terrible.
You forget about this stuff, and then suddenly it comes back to you, and you're like, oh yeah, right.
Man, that's something that stays with you, I imagine. All right, I know we only have time for one more question, so this is a very important one. If Infinity Pool is nominated for Fangoria Chainsaw Awards next year, are you going to come and hang out with us at the ceremony?
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. Okay, that was too easy. All right. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Go check out Infinity Pool, now playing in theaters. Not fetishizing theaters, but you should see this one in a theater. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great in a non-fetishy way.
Not fetishy.
Please do.
Or,
Thank you.
or go see it in a fetishy way. We're not here to kink shame. If that's your thing, go do it. Semen dripping on rocks, all right here on the big screen. All right, Brandon, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.